grief, rot, and resurrection. Welcome to the Garden of the Corruption. The Resurrection Mound is the introductory scenario for the Magnus Archives role-playing game, a 2 to 3 hour investigative horror adventure designed to ease players into the system's mechanics and tone. This adventure is also designed well to play anywhere from 1 to 6 players. I played the game with 1 player and it worked well. It is set in a quiet suburban home plagued by supernatural insects. What could go wrong? So there are going to be spoilers moving forward. Your players are investigators from the Magnus Institute sent to follow up on a disturbing statement from Karen, a grieving widow who claims something unnatural is happening in her garden. Her account involves strange red and green hornet-like insects building a nest that smells and somehow terrifyingly bringing back dead animals to life. Things escalate when her husband Tom dies unexpectedly and she sprinkles his ashes on the mound. Now he's back, sort of. The adventure begins with your team deciding how to approach the case. Do you research Beacon and How, the pest control company that may not be what it seems, or do you head straight for the house where Karen and her son Nicholas are hiding something? Or perhaps you poke around the buzzing, rotting mound in the backyard first. It's not long before you're dealing with resurrected squirrels, a backyard that vibrates with insect energy, and Tom, a mindless, ash-coated revenant held together by buzzing parasites. Somewhere deep in the mound, a queen is laying a corrupt egg sac tied to the entity known as the Corruption. Destroying it might save others, or it might already be too late. Okay, so let's talk about the characters first. The Jeong family is at the heart of this scenario. Karen, the grieving wife, who's barely holding things together, and Nicholas, their disheveled young son, trying to make sense of the world that's come unglued, and Tom, now a shuddering construct of ash, bone, and insect hive, who stumbles through the house trying to protect his family. While the NPCs don't offer much variety or depth in terms of interactive roleplay, they serve the theme effectively, so Karen is stuck in denial trying to protect her child and her not-quite-dead husband, while isolating herself from help. And Nicholas's fear and confusion add human stakes, and Tom is one of the most grotesque undead concepts I've seen. Fragile, haunted, but still trying to hug his wife. Then there's Beacon and Hal. These two exterminators are towering, emotionless men in matching gray uniforms who show up and disappear with eerie precision. They're not just here to remove bugs, they're servants of the Corruption, quietly cultivating the mound for their own dark ends. Their brief appearances are chilling, and even if your players don't engage with them directly, their presence adds another layer of menace and mystery to the world. That being said, NPC interactions in this scenario are fairly limited and linear. The characters serve the plot and the mood, but there's little variety or opportunity for some dynamic roleplay, so this isn't really the focus of the adventure. The adventure ties directly to the Corruption, one of the entities from the Magnus mythos, known for everything that disgusts, contaminates, or infects. Those drawn to the Corruption find love or comfort from mold, bugs, or disease, as strange as that might be. The adventure excels at introducing this entity's signature horror, the feeling that something vile is building just beneath the surface, unseen until it bursts forth. For the moment Karen describes the bugs and their nest, hard, reddish-brown, and growing, you get the sense that this is not just an infestation. The 6-foot mound in the garden isn't just a grotesque structure, it's an altar to something ancient and wrong. It stinks of death and sweet decay, crawls with hornet-like insects with too many legs, and pulses with life it should not have. Inside that mound, the queen lays a corrupt egg sac, an artifact of the Corruption itself. This sac isn't just a disgusting centerpiece, it can be used in a ritual to open a doorway to the entity's realm, bringing despair and sickness with it. And if your players don't act, that doorway might open right in Karen Jeong's backyard. Now let's move on to the individual scenes in this adventure. Starting with Karen's statement. The game kicks off with a chilling statement from Karen, setting the tone immediately. In our playthrough, this hooked my player right away. They were intrigued by the description of the insects, and especially the idea that something was being resurrected in the garden. My player immediately tried to call the Jeongs and looked up info online, uncovering nothing helpful. Using the missing detail ability, they did highlight the exterminator's bizarre behavior, though the result of that roll felt a bit anticlimactic since that already was pretty much obvious from context. That being said, the adventurer did a good job here of anticipating player actions, and the information was clear to find and reference during play. My player chose to go to the house first and was met by Nicholas at the door. A successful persuasion roll got him to call for Karen, but she wouldn't let the investigator in. At this point, my player took a stealthy approach, sneaking around the back to explore the garden and eventually breaking into the house quietly. Since this adventure is on the shorter side, it doesn't come with any handouts or maps, and I really wish it had included a simple blueprint of the house. I found myself needing to know the layout quickly while my player was deciding where to go next. So a quick tip for you is to sketch out one beforehand. It'll just make things much more smooth when you go and help your players navigate the space more fluidly. The moment my player saw the Resurrection Mound was incredibly effective. I described a cat in the distance, and my player immediately put the pieces together that this was the supposedly dead cat from the statement. The mound itself, nearly 6 feet tall, was humming with insect life, and it was approached cautiously. My player thought it would be a good idea to capture one of the insects for study. A successful speed roll let the player grab a specimen insect and put it in a jar. This wasn't something accounted for in the book, but it was easy enough to improv, and after he left the house, I allowed him to drop off the specimen for study. He would later find out that this mound likely had a queen, but that this is an insect the expert had never seen before. Before entering the house, the player explored the garage and was attacked by a resurrected squirrel. This was our first combat, and I felt like the timing was good for this. Plus, we both enjoyed the insects bursting from the squirrel's mouth when it was hit. It also worked well to escalate tension before encountering Tom. So if your players visit the mound before going into the house, I do highly recommend having a combat with one of the resurrected animals. To avoid implicating the Institute, my player used the disguise skill to make himself look like a homeless man before breaking into the house. You know, like a good employee of the Magnus Archives would do. He successfully passed a stealth roll to stay quiet inside and crept through the wrecked home. The atmosphere was effective here. Sour air, buzzing insects, and broken furniture created a sense of dread. My player stumbled on Tom pretty quickly and quietly. In our playthrough, Tom only taking 1 physical damage per hit led to a fight that started to feel repetitive after a few rounds. Especially because my player used a cipher called Dance Through the Maze that reduced the difficulty of all manual dexterity tasks, making attacks and defense rolls trivial. To keep the pacing tight and preserve the emotional impact, we chose to end the fight narratively, and the player destroyed Tom while Karen, overwhelmed and distraught, called the police after unsuccessfully begging the PC to stop. To maintain emotional tension, I highly recommend bringing Nicholas into the scene if he hasn't appeared yet. It recenters the moral question whether this ashen insect revenant is still Tom, whether he deserves to exist, and how Nicholas will be shaped by what the investigators choose to do. It's not just a combat encounter, it's a decision with emotional fallout, which I think is an interesting element to this adventure. After all the Tom chaos, my player decided to set the mound on fire, and I really like how this adventure points out that this is extremely flammable and will catch other things on fire along with it. I thought this was a nice touch and consequences for defaulting to fire, so this caused a chain reaction, igniting the surrounding hedges. My player fled, calling the fire department on the way back to the archives. Crucially, my player fled before ever discovering the egg sac and before realizing that the fire wouldn't actually kill the insects. That means Karen, in theory, still has access to it and whatever ritual it might complete. This unresolved horror leaves a perfect thread for future scenarios, and I also really like the idea of including the exterminators in future adventures, as they are already in 2 statements at the archives, so it would be fun to see them pop up again with more corruption-related content. The pacing was really nice on this adventure, and it was well suited for a 2 to 3 hour one-shot. The layout is clean with enemy stats and difficulties right in the margins, so that means it was really easy to prep, which is great since most people will be learning the system at the same time. The Resurrection Mound is everything a good intro scenario should be: short, easy to run, packed with dread, and full of decisions that actually matter. It's not about winning, it's about how far you're willing to go, what truths you're willing to uncover, and what you leave behind when you do. If you're diving into the Magnus Archives RPG, this is a great place to start. The link will be in the description below. And if you're enjoying this content on the Magnus Archives RPG, check out my Patreon. Thank you everyone for your support. It allows me to keep making videos and exploring new systems. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!